Speaker.
One last one.
Order. Order. I'm calling the Honourable Mary Ann Street.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for calling for order. It's obvious when the party opposite gives the women the night off that they don't control themselves quite as well as they usually do. So, bring back Maggie Barry. Mr. Speaker, I'm rising to speak to the second reading, just a very few minutes after I've spoken to the first reading of this Amendment Bill. I want to pick up on a few comments that have been made. While it was absolutely irrelevant to the debate in hand, because the previous member introduced it, Mr. Speaker, it's only fair, I think, to give some rebuttal. Jonathan Young referred to a piece of validating legislation that he thought would cause us to cringe. But can I just say, Mr. Speaker, that we paid back that money, not like the National Party, who didn't pay their GST on their expenditure. So let's just be clear about who is the greater sinner in this competition, Mr. Speaker. So that, let's put the record straight. Labor paid the money back. Labor paid the money back, and the GST on the National Party's bill in that election still hasn't been paid, to my knowledge. They forgot to calculate it, and then they didn't cough up when they were told they should. However, that's the end of that irrelevant interjection from Jonathan Young, as far as I'm concerned. Mr. Speaker, the only reason the government is pushing through this amendment to an amendment to an act is because they have very little in their toolbox by which to energise, and I use the word advisedly, this economy. If they are going to pick up this economy, they have three strategies only. One is pokies. We can get money from pokies, says Mr. Key, and that'll be a fillip to the economy. Secondly, they can allow any multinational that wishes to, any multinational that is prepared to engage in extractive industry in this country, who gives us a sideways glance, to come into this country and to take advantage of whatever laws have been sold most recently for the privilege of them to do so. Mr. Speaker, the third strategy the government has, of course, is asset sales. So it's pretty impoverished when it comes to a plan to lift this economy. Asset sales, pokey machines and multinationals for whom we will prostitute our legislation at every turn, according to John Key, because a deal is a deal is a deal. And so we have this tawdry little amendment bill coming in to amend an Amendment Act, which was only passed a few weeks ago, which will facilitate all and any extractive industry multinational to come in and take as much as they can, in the course of which Jonathan Young assures us there will be lots of jobs created. Well, if the jobs are going to be created on the basis of the risk to the environment that this shabby piece of legislation represents, or at the risk of infringing international law, which this shabby bill also represents, or at the risk of watering down health and safety standards so there is no guarantee for workers who engage in the extractive activities and particularly the ones that go on beforehand. What are they called? Those surveying activities that go on before, seismic surveying that goes on prior to any exploration. Mr. Speaker, this legislation I mentioned risks breaching international law, and that is unacceptable. The Minister for much of this debate tonight has been deep in conversation with the Honourable Tim Grosser, who of course is a great expert in international law, especially as it relates to trade. However, he's not such an expert, I think, in other international law, because when the amendment bill was first introduced, a legal opinion provided by the international environmental lawyer Duncan Curry raised serious concerns about consistency with New Zealand's international obligations and with the Bill of Rights Act. But what we had in that process, apart from the fact that any other or contradictory legal opinion is never taken into account by this government, what we had in that instance was again the minister playing ducks and drakes with the process, or that is a kind way of putting it, because, Mr. Speaker, what he was doing was basically covering his own incompetence. He didn't mention the changes, the proposed changes that would violate international law, that is, the protesting ban, until the Crown Minerals Amendment Bill was introduced back to the House from Select Committee. So this big abandonment of civil liberties and the right to protest peacefully was taken away by an SOP, a supplementary order paper, introduced by the minister late in the piece. Either the minister doesn't know the rules or he is deliberately flaunting them, because now we have another process that says that this piece of legislation, to amend the Amendment Act, has to go through under urgency and has to proceed in double quick time. And that's evidenced by the shortness of the speeches that the National Party members opposite have been instructed to give. Mr. Speaker, the point about extending the ban to protest is the point about overreaching our jurisdiction, that suddenly we seem to be able to pass laws that cover not only our economic zone, but an additional 1.7 million square kilometres. The Minister says that we are quite wrong about the denial of human rights. Well, I would like to say once more to the Minister that if out in the waters over the continental shelf, which I think this Minister mistakenly thinks we can legislate about, but however, I'll leave that one there for now. If in the waters over the continental shelf there is a standoff between a drilling ship and a protest ship, and the protest ship stops at the requisite 500 metres from the drilling rig, and the exploratory vehicle or drilling vehicle ship moves towards the protest ship, then who is to be at fault? Who is infringing the 500 metres? Will they simply say the protest ship clearly is not staying 500 metres away from us and we're going to keep advancing until we drive them back onto the shore? Who then is the culprit and who infringes the 500 metres, Mr. Bridges? This is sloppy. This will have to be corrected again when the government wakes up and realises that there are people who know about international maritime law, even though our minister doesn't, and this will have to be amended again. So the amendment bill to the Amendment Act will have to be amended further. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call Gareth Hughes.
Kia ora, Mr. Speaker. Ngā mihi nui kia koutou.